10 stories, 20 minutes. It's that simple. It's 20-ish minutes. Jennifer and I have 5 stories each. One is about LGBTIQIA issues. One is for about BIPOC issues. One is funny. One is feel good. And then one is a topic that's probably of interest to our audience. Mods and admins, if you could drop the link to the poll. There's a poll? Yes, there's a poll. You get to control the news. We have a poll that is up, and you get to vote on the story that you want Jennifer and I to unpack in more detail. Now, you probably shouldn't vote right now, and we will call out to the mods and admins a couple of times going, hey, drop another link to the poll, drop another link to the poll. Towards the end of the show, mods and admins will close the poll, and they will let us know what story you picked that you want Jennifer and I to talk about more. Jennifer, are we ready to do this?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Do it.
Let's do it. All right, first story. The board overseeing the Los Angeles Unified School District has cut $25 million from the budget for school police and will use the money to help fund an achievement plan for Black students. The plan approved by the school board Tuesday will cut 70 sworn officers, 62 non-sworn officers, and 1 support staff position from the Los Angeles School Police Department, leaving it with a force of 211 officers. In addition, police officers will no longer be allowed to use pepper spray on students. Hey, Rochester, New York, you paying attention? This is on top of the $150 million already slashed from the Los Angeles Police Department budget last year. It's worth noting that among the police equipment owned by the Los Angeles Unified School District, Jennifer, is an armored personnel carrier. You get 60 seconds to unpack it.
Armored personnel carrier. I think this is actually fantastic news if they're going to funnel that money from defunding and slashing their police force in the LA, public schools, and channel it into an achievement program that will actually help Black students. I'm all for it. I know that there are, different LA school district encompasses many different socioeconomic classes. And I'm sure that a high majority of the police force is concentrated in the areas that tend to be more poverty level, BIPOC occupied areas. So I'm hoping that a lot of the slashing they're doing and funding of achievement programs goes to those areas that most need it. But other than that, I think this is a good story, and I don't understand why they have an armored personnel carrier. What does that even look like?
You ready to go to your story?
I'm ready.
All right, the clock is running.
Okay, so we're going to start with Disney Plus last year actually started to put in what they called stories matter to kind of account for the negative depictions of race in some of their stories, including Dumbo and Peter Pan. And let's face it, Disney has a long history of stereotypical and racist representations within their films. The one movie excluded from that, Pocahontas. Pocahontas far and away is one of the most racist depictions, stereotypical depictions that Disney has out there. Pocahontas, as she's portrayed in the film, is hypersexualized, nearly adult, has this romantic relationship with John Smith that is not mirror any of the actual history of Pocahontas, who was actually a child when she met John Smith, had a very friendly familial relationship with him, and was actually forced into a church and married to a different John, and ended up going back to London and caught smallpox and died before she got to come home. So there's a lot of Native people, including Indian country today, that are not exactly happy about that.
So I actually have a lot to comment on this. I read this story. I watched several of the video clips that were on there. Mm-hmm. As a wee little lad, I had a record of Disney songs that included from Peter Pan, What Makes the Red Man Red. Yes. I haven't watched that in decades and decades. And I rewatched it today. It is so cringeworthy. Like this would never fly today. It shouldn't have flown back then. They tried to make like a cutesy joke out of it again, right? It's because they're in love and they're blushing. They got so much. I mean, they basically got everything wrong for starters, and it was just unbelievably racist. And yes, from a historical standpoint, Pocahontas is a steaming pile of crap. And on top of that, pugs are not evil, and there were no pugs in the new colonies at the time. Pocahontas also slags out pugs.
Yes. Yes, it does. You're right.
All right, story number 3. The United States House of Representatives is expected to vote on the Equality Act next Thursday. The bill would provide sweeping changes and legal protection to the LGBTQIA community, particularly the transgender community. The Equity Act passed the House in May of 2019, but a certain senator named Mitch McConnell said, yeah, I'm not going to advance that bill into the Senate. The bill has 3 Senate sponsors, including Jeff Merkley, Cory Booker, and Tammy Baldwin. Mara Kiesling, executive director at the National Center for Transgender Equality, said, and I quote, "No act of Congress can end bias overnight or stop all attacks against transgender people, but the Equality Act is clear, consistent, and nationwide statement that our country believes that all people, including those who are transgender, should be treated fairly and with respect." Jennifer, you get to unpack that.
Yeah, I'm all for, trans rights. Bring it on. Bring on equality. The fact that we're still in a place where people are so concerned about who other people choose to love and who they want to be, and how they identify is extremely troubling. And the fact that it causes this ongoing rampant discrimination because gender roles are so ingrained in our society that people can't see beyond that in any capacity. So yeah, I think it's anything that, brings trans equality. I'm all for it. Let's do it.
All right, you ready for your story?
Yeah, let's do it. Mine's not as happy. All right. So the governor of Puerto Rico has declared a state of emergency over gender violence on the island as a step in the right direction, but cautioned that real change can only come after a meaningful shift on the societal level. Activists in Puerto Rico have been calling for years that something needs to be done about ongoing gender violence, which includes trans peoples. But in 2020, there was an increased sense of urgency because the U.S. territory had 60 femicides. And that's a 62% increase over the year before. So there was actually a highly publicized murder of a homeless trans woman who was actually just going into a fast food restaurant to use the restroom, and then was surrounded and then shot and murdered and it was videoed while people laughed in the background. And the governor thought this was potentially put on social media as well. So this gender violence covers not only girls and women, but also transgender people as well. And so they're hoping that this can kind of curb some of the violence that's escalated in the last year.
Yeah. I say this really carefully as a white guy, right? Because I'm going to skate the line. But in certain cultures, transgender and gay LGBTQ society is really looked down upon even more so than, say, in the United States in general. Puerto Rico is a United States territory. At the end of the day, what happened is horrible. I applaud the governor for recognizing for what it is, declaring the emergency, and working to take action. But just as we said in the prior story, laws aren't going to change hearts. Time is going to change hearts. That's my view on it. So 2 really contrasting stories. Jennifer, separated by 150 miles of ocean, 200 miles of ocean, and the same country. Yes. So thank you for bringing that one. All right. Story number 5. If you're thinking you had a bad day, you could always be 57-year-old Bruce Morway. Bruce had a job interview scheduled with the city of North Olmsted, Ohio, but decided to skip the interview and rob a bank. The would-be bank robber wore that essential item when robbing a bank, a mask. But as you can see in the picture, he has his nose hanging out like a freaking penis. He wore it all wrong. The North Olmsted Police Department posted a security photo of Morway, which was immediately identified by his parole officer. During the robbery, Morway claimed he had a gun and he got away with an undisclosed amount of money. There is no word on whether the money was recovered. Jennifer, I don't take pleasure in seeing anybody arrested. Well, okay, maybe Donald Trump if he actually paid for the crimes for what he did. But maybe Bruce isn't actually ready to be out in society and he's safer behind bars. So you get 60 seconds to unpack it.
First of all, like you feel like if he's been behind bars, he's probably seasoned enough to know they should have covered more of his face, I feel like. But also in the article, they make it seem like it was just like this cavalier choice. Like, I'm going to forego this job interview. I'm just going to go rob a bank instead. I did read that they arrested him on February 11th. So he's now in jail. But yeah, that just potentially seemed like not only a poor choice, like maybe you should have gone to the job interview, but also if you were going to rob the bank, you should have covered up more of your face.
Feeling hella cute. Hello. I'm going to rob a bank today. Maybe go to jail.
And he did.
All right, Jennifer, you ready for story 6?
Oh, this one comes to you straight from Florida, so you know it's good, guys. So we have men at a Florida hotel. These are older men, and I think they're 50s and one's 81, who posed as U.S. Marshals to avoid wearing masks, authorities say. So they're just like chilling at this resort. This is Walter Wayne Brown Jr., who's 53, and Gary Brummett, who is 81. They were asked to cover their faces. The men refused. They threatened to arrest employees and saddle the hotel with a fine. But the scheme collapsed. One employee thought they were acting suspicious and called police. Officers and a real U.S. Marshal, not these fake ones, arrested and the men on charges of impersonating a federal officer. What's particularly interesting, though, is one of the men brandished a laminated card that said he was a Marshal of the Cherokee Nation. I actually went and did a little background stuff and couldn't find that either one had any connection to the Cherokee Nation. But it's pretty interesting because you always see like these white men are like, my grandma was a Cherokee princess. That's these dudes.
It's funny you closed on that because, Jennifer, a lifetime ago, I dated a woman that claimed she was part Cherokee. It is really amazing how many people in this country, it's like half the country is part Cherokee.
Yeah, everybody's Cherokee. Everybody's got a Cherokee grandma, princess. Yeah.
Elizabeth Warren, right? Her claim was part Cherokee, if I remember correctly. Yes.
I don't remember if that was. It might have been. I don't know.
Hey, Malcontents, because I know we got smart people to watch the show. Give us the 411 in the comments. We'll go. All of that to get out of wearing a mask.
Yeah. That's a lot. You have to like laminate some fake badges. Like, just put the mask on, dude. It's fine.
So, just so everybody knows, Jennifer and I, we do not coordinate on these stories. I know people are like, I see a theme. Actually, there isn't. We pull these out independently and drop them on each other pretty close to the start of the show. Mods and admins, I want to call out again. Go ahead, drop that link into the comments. I'm pointing too far. Into the comments for the poll because we're more than that halfway point. The other thing is, Malcontents, spam those hearts on Twitter, Periscope, and Facebook. Let those mods and admins know that you love them. If you're on Twitch and you're a subscriber, you should be a subscriber. You can go ahead and use our amazing emotes that were designed for us by Rosa. Rosa does an amazing job. And if you're on YouTube, we love you over there. I know you're like on YouTube Islands. Like, we don't have emotes. We can't spam hearts. You can just go, I love you mods or something like that. And we love y'all who are watching on YouTube. Okay, I get story number 7 and the clock is running. Story number 7 is all about this guy Ted Cruz and his awful, horrible, terrible 48 hours. Ted Cruz, the man who in 2016 says we need to build a wall to keep those awful people from Mexico coming in, fled the country because he's living in a state that has no electricity, no natural gas, and no drinking water. He fled with his wife and kids on a flight to Cancun, Mexico, while literally, Texans are freezing to death in their homes. Then to top it all off, he throws his own kids under the bus, going, well, I was flying down there because my kids were on a school trip. But it gets even better. Yeah, his own wife Heidi ratted him out because in chats that have appeared and have been shared with the media, Heidi was asking friends and neighbors, hey, who wants to go with us down to Cancun because there's heat there and our house is too cold for us. Jennifer, I could keep going, but what a dirtbag. You get the glorious 60 seconds to unpack this. You're welcome.
Okay, so first, I think it's hilarious that his wife is the one that gets it busted since, Donald Trump basically called her ugly and he said nothing. Second, Ted Cruz is disgusting, and so is his haircut. But the fact that your state, the state you represent, is in the midst of a crisis and you're like taking your family and headed to your house in Cancun is demonstrative of how little you actually care about your position as an elected official and the constituents you represent. That's all I'm going to say about that.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and use some more of my time. Apparently, he left his dog at home, and the word is, although our research team, Jennifer, I literally read this while we were on the show. Our research team is working on it. My mouth to God, that's going on right now. The poodle's name is allegedly Snowflake. Just please let it be true.
You could take yourselves to Cancun, but you can't make sure that your dog is somewhere safe and warm.
And with that, Jennifer, you get to do story number 8.
Okay, we're going to go on to something good here before I share my last story. And it's the Woodland Park Zoo. Welcome to baby gorilla in early February. And the baby girl was born to the zoo's 24-year-old female gorilla, Nadiri. Truth be told, I'm a little bit conflicted about zoos, but the gorillas at the Woodland Park Zoo are actually Western lowland gorillas that are highly endangered. So it's good that they're replenishing the population. The problem is, though, and the baby girl is adorable. But Nadiri, this is her second baby, but she was partially raised in human captivity. And she had issues also with her first baby, kind of neglecting it and really taking it a little bit of time for the maternal instinct to kick in. And she's going through that a little bit again, but she did actually hold the baby a little bit and is showing some interest in it, but it just isn't ready to nurse it yet. So she's having to be assisted by the caretakers at the Woodland Park Zoo, but it is a great time. She was almost 5 pounds when she was born. She's absolutely adorable, and it's always great when we have one of these endangered gorillas reproduce and we have more of them to potentially, hopefully, someday, if we stop farming palm, to reintroduce them back into the wild.
We have video. Oh my God, it's just cuteness overload.
Yeah, he's adorable.
I actually, if we get to unpack that story, I actually have things to unpack on that story. So I'm just letting you know, Malcontents, because I only got 10 seconds. So I'm not going to use the 10 seconds. We're just going to jump to story 9. We're getting close. We're getting close for you to really dive in and do those votes. And with that, let me go ahead and start the clock for story number 9. If you've lived in Houston or if you've ever watched local Houston TV, you know Jim Mattress Mac Mackingvale. You could almost think of him as the Vern Funk of Houston. Mackingvale became nationally famous in 2005 when he opened up his 3 furniture stores as emergency shelters for Hurricane Katrina evacuees. During a time when Houston wasn't very welcoming to Hurricane Katrina evacuees because they were a little too black. Yeah, I'm calling you out, Houston, on that. Well, he's done it again, opening up his stores as warming centers and shelters. His 3 furniture stores are accommodating 300 people nightly, following COVID social distant rules, and he is feeding over 800 people daily. Mattress Mac is invested in generators, 15,000 gallons of diesel fuel, porta potties, food trucks, and sanitation stations. He had to get those because the pipes are all frozen in his stores. No one in need is being turned away, either for a place to sleep or just to get warm. Mackingvale said he was moved to action when he saw the police covering the body of a homeless man who had frozen to death on Valentine's Day, and he felt he had to do something. You get 60 seconds to talk about Mattress Mac.
So when you sent this to me earlier, you're like, this is such a great story. Have your tissues ready. And I was like, whatever, I'm tough. I can handle it. That was the most moving story. And some of like these stories of the families who are like, we had nowhere else to go. We went in there. We don't, we can't ever express our appreciation of how he welcomed us and made us feel at home, and our children, and fed us like, this meal of chicken and rice and whatever. What a good, feel good, like altruistic, wonderful story to come out of this crisis in Texas. As Ted Cruz is basically abandoning the state, you have this man opening up his furniture stores and feeding people who are really in desperate need right now. So this was like an amazing story, and thank you for making me tear up a little bit. Luckily, I wasn't wearing any mascara.
Something we should do, Jennifer, to your point, it really is an excellently written story. I just read it but you're right. It is a magnificently written story. We should 5 Fast Facts that one. Yes. And we should get that up on the website because It really is a magnificently written story, just from a creative and artistic and a writing standpoint. And with that, you get to take us home, Jennifer, with story number 10.
Oh, so I don't know how much of our audience is familiar with The Bachelor and Bachelorette, but Chris Harrison has taken a leave from his position after he did an interview with a former Bachelorette who happens to be a BIPOC woman named Rachel Lindsay, and defended a former contestant who in 2018 took part in a Southern plantation antebellum-themed sorority formal. He was like, we can't really play in the whole white dude devil's advocate role, but it really caused a lot of alarm. And now, of course, you have people coming out saying, well, now he's being canceled and this is ridiculous. But, these are very kind of upholding these racist norms and saying, she did this a couple of years ago. It's not that big a deal. When it really is, idolizing the period right before the Civil War in the U.S. South is actually a really big deal. And she herself has even, apologized for that. It took him a few days to come out and apologize for it. But Rachel Lindsay, who's the BIPOC woman who held the interview, was absolutely appalled, but she handled herself so. She's a lawyer. She's absolutely brilliant and stunning. But she handled herself so well. It was so composed through the entire thing. I was like, oh, wow, you are an impressive woman, because that had to be difficult to sit through.
So Malcontents, I'm going to let you know something. And Jennifer doesn't know this. This is the first time she's hearing this. On our website, we have Google Analytics. And Google Analytics tracks Jennifer, this will make sense in a second. Tracks scary levels of stuff on people that come to the website, including things like cohort groups on what things interest our audience beyond politics and social action. And you know what the number one thing is, Jennifer? She is hearing this for the first time.
What?
Like celebrity news and crap like this. So you're right on message to our audience. I got to tell you, which is why I've never been, why are you doing this? So I'm going to take liberty to take a few more seconds with this, because I could get really judgy about The Bachelor and The Bachelorette. I have no opinion because I haven't watched the show in years and years and years, but I have confessed to watching trash TV, and I cannot get enough of 90 Days Fiancé. And the last thing I'll say, going to the plantation thing, dressing up like that, gross. Defending it, super gross. And I'll leave it at that. Malcontent, poll. Admins, go ahead and drop that poll up there. They'll have the link for that. You can also, it's through our news site. Yeah, you can send us news tips at malcontentment.com. If you have news tips, people send us tips and we respond to them. Our website is malcontentnews.com. We do have that poll link hidden, so to speak, because we just don't want people stumbling in after the show and going, what the heck is this? And how come nobody's listening to me? So drop that link, mods and admins, and we will wait to find out what the polls are. Jennifer, a brief pause for the cause, and then we come back.
Black Coffee is a hub for communities and a hub for meeting people, making friends, and understanding.
What Black Coffee is to me is a place to actually call home, a place where Black youth will feel welcomed, where Black families will come and feel like they're at home.
What we're trying to build is more than just coffee. Community is something that we do naturally. We know who's in the community, we know what the deficits are, and we're trying to fix that. We want to bring people together.
My hope is that the phrase grounded in excellence shows up everywhere and that it becomes a movement.
I'm looking forward to hanging out at Black Coffee with my friends and feeling safe.
Black coffee to me means opportunity for people like me and my other friends and family to come here and do homework safely and hang out and stuff like that.
That is happening. It is happening.
Jennifer, we have 2 pages now.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I love our patrons. Thank you so much. And I just dropped my show notes. I literally just slid right off the desk, but that's okay.